Trumpcare, Ryancare, Obamacare, ASAcare, and the Arkansas delegation. King Lee, one public relations problem solved, but do others threaten? And with the session nearing its end, how to spend? Arkansas Week, next.
Arkansas Week is made possible in part by the Arkansas Times, keeping you informed by covering people, events, and politics in Arkansas. By FM 89, KUAR in Little Rock, with in-depth news reporting, analysis, and discussion each weekday.
Hello again, everyone. Thanks for joining us for Arkansas Week, which begins, once again, of necessity in Washington, D.C. Sarah White-Skodacek joins us from Arkansas Public Media, John Lyon from the Arkansas News Bureau, and Steve Bronner, an independent journalist. Thanks to everybody for coming in. As per custom, we are compelled to tape our broadcast at mid-morning on Friday. Lady and gentlemen, as we meet, the U.S. House of Representatives is contemplating a vote with enormous stakes for a president, a speaker, and health care in Arkansas and the other 49. Sarah.
Well, as we speak, it's not clear that there's enough votes for this to pass, but President Trump has been pushing hard. Our audience will probably know the outcome by the time we're watching, but there are some conservative Republicans who are opposed to what they call Obamacare light. And then on the other hand, Democrats who say that there are essential health benefits that are being cut out of the system that they can't accept. So this is a huge test for President Trump as for whether or not he can rally the votes at the 11th hour to pass the bill.
And we have the breakdown, at least as promised. No reason to believe that the vote won't go as has been indicated by Arkansas's 4 delegates. The gentleman who sits for the 1st district, Mr. Crawford, an adamant no. And the other 3 U.S. representatives, Mr. Womack in the 3rd, Mr. Hill in the 2nd, and down south and up into the north, Mr. Westerman, all inclined to support the speaker.
That's right. Representative Crawford has been a no for the entire time, almost. He's been very clear on this.
The day it was announced, I think he did.
And it's really interesting. President Trump is a different kind of president. And yesterday he said, basically, we're going to have a vote tomorrow. And if you don't say yes, we're going to not, then Obamacare will stay. And what he is doing is he is the deal maker, and he is ready to walk away from the deal at this point. And he's able to do that because he knows that what congressmen fear more than anything else is a primary opponent. And he knows that there's another election coming very soon. In fact, Arkansas's House of Representatives voted this week to move the state's primaries permanently to March. It's that close. And he can come to districts across the country on those who voted no and say, your congressman is the reason that Obamacare still exists. And so I think he's willing, if it doesn't pass. And I think he's willing to do that and play that hand and basically call the opponent's bluff. And that today, I don't know if it's a bluff, but today that includes Representative Crawford, who said he's a firm no because he doesn't think it goes far enough. But Trump will be able to use the power of the bully pulpit. And bully pulpit is an accurate word with President Trump. And he will be able to use that. That's why he's willing to make this, make it an all or nothing deal today.
Well, reflecting the all or nothing deal in the close vote, Vice President Pence was to have visited Arkansas today. No one's quite sure exactly why, but John, that trip was canceled early Friday morning.
Well, and you mentioned
need him in Washington, I guess, to crack knuckles.
You mentioned that Representative Crawford was a no vote, so it is a little surprising that if he was going to come to Arkansas, he wouldn't come to Representative Crawford's district. But people in Jonesboro would have seen they would have seen his district, would have seen it on television, and so I would guess that he was coming here to put some pressure on Representative Crawford. But not surprisingly, he's apparently found it more important to be in Washington today than in Little Rock.
I would suggest also that that reflects Mr. Crawford's resolve as opposed to any gains the White House thought it might make in the 1st District of Arkansas.
He's been firm almost from the very beginning that this bill doesn't do nearly enough, and so apparently he's not worried about what the consequences will be, or maybe he's not worried enough to change what he's going to do. So at this point, he's definitely a firm no.
Well, let's assume that the all or nothing works and the bill clears the House. Clearly a victory there for Mr. Trump and certainly for the House leadership. But there's the other end of the Capitol, and you have both U.S. senators from Arkansas along with several other, by one count 10 or a dozen more, Republican U.S. senators, Steve, that have profound reservations about it, to put it mildly.
Right, and the political dynamics are different with the Senate because you only have elections every 6 years there. And in 2018, there are only a handful of Republican incumbents who are up for re-election. It's almost all Democrats of the 33 that are going to be running. And so the president has a lot less of a hammer to wield there than on the House, where everybody's up for re-election in less than a year in their primaries. So the political dynamics are totally different in the Senate, and senators are different than representatives. And Senator Cotton has made it very clear. He's advised members of the House, do not vote for this bill and walk the plank because we're not going to vote for it. However, now that statement was made before this latest all or nothing proposal by President Trump. So we'll see where that goes. But, we're told it has no chance in the Senate. But in Washington, all you can do is take the step in front of you.
Well, in addition to those Republican U.S. senators and members of the House, there are a number of Republican governors, and sits one not 2 blocks from where we are right now, Sarah, with some pretty profound reservations about that.
The governor has been lobbying to keep the Medicaid expansion that financially has really benefited the state. He, as many of our viewers will know, ran on a platform to end Arkansas's Medicaid expansion, Arkansas Works program, but he's become an advocate for it, while he does want to cut it back a bit, which is kind of an interesting solution that other states may soon follow. He's submitting federal waivers to reduce the Medicaid expansion program to right at the poverty line, which would potentially cut costs for this state, as the federal match rate for those beneficiaries is going to scale down. We don't know how much. It could be more than the 5% that's projected, depending on what happens in Congress. So some might call it a middle road kind of compromise, but he is in a somewhat unique position as a Republican governor advocating for the continuation of the program for his state.
Well, he's not the only Republican governor, Steve. In Kentucky, they're just wild-eyed about the possibility of having to scale it back.
We also got Governor Kasich in Ohio.
Oh, yes.
Is extremely supportive of keeping the Medicaid expansion. So, just as representatives and senators are different from each other, governors are different from members of Congress. They have budgets to balance, and theirs have to balance, as Arkansas's will have to do here in the next week or so. And so, and they have their, I think, closer to human needs, and they just, they're less about ideological battles and more about practical problem solving. And so that's where the governor is now.
Sarah, you've been looking at the matter of waivers, doing a lot of reporting on the matter of Medicaid waivers anyway, that Mr. Hutchinson and many other governors, Republicans in particular, have been seeking.
Yeah, so
what do we know at this point?
Well, the big emphasis is on work requirements for beneficiaries, but also moving people, as I said, above 100% of the poverty line. So for a single person, that's like $11,000 to $17,000 roughly. Anybody who makes in that range, who was in the expansion program, meaning they got Medicaid expansion, will now be moved onto the regular exchange. The regular exchange has slightly different rules. One of them is that if you miss a payment, for example, you can be kicked off. There might be higher deductibles or copays, and of course that all depends on what happens in Congress again. But it's a way for the state to be off the hook for those people and to move them more into the open market, the marketplace.
He has been quite optimistic, and I think that's been borne out so far in Mr. Hutchinson in terms of what he wants from HHS and DC as a very sympathetic cabinet secretary
And he's got
and
one
administration.
And he's got one that's more sympathetic than he had, certainly. I mean, he tried very hard with President Obama's HHS secretary and was able to get a little bit, but not nearly enough. And he feels like with Trump's administration, he'll get a lot more.
We'll continue to follow. As the session, John, kind of winds down, we had terms of major issues. Really, the biggie left for the General Assembly is the budget. Always is. That's the end of the session deal. We're down to days now.
Right. The process they go through at the end of each session is called revenue stabilization, and they will pass a revenue stabilization act, which will set the priorities. It'll contain the state budget and the spending priorities, the categories that are funded first, and then next, and then next, and that is expected to be released on Monday or Tuesday, I'm told. And if everything goes smoothly, then they should be able to go home on the following Monday or Tuesday.
Any surprises?
With that,
Yeah.
not really. A lot.
Can't see any. Yeah, all the appropriations are pretty much hammered
A
down.
lot of it's done. Half the general revenue budget is education, and that's always decided before the session even starts. And then the governor did his tax cuts early on, so that kind of narrowed what you could do at that point because the budget is supposed to balance theoretically. I think that we're pretty much as far as any kind of financial. I mean, the highway tax isn't going anywhere. It looks like. I don't see any big budget issues.
Well, surface transportation is one of your beats, and we're not going to leave this session with much in terms of highway, or anything really new.
No, it never really had a very good chance.
What happened, Steve? It just wasn't there?
Well, I mean, there's too many legislators who signed a no tax pledge. Anything that looks like a tax is going to have problems. There's the possibility that we're going to see some sales tax revenue from Amazon and some online retailers, and there's always a thought of, well, we're already, that's a tax increase in some people's eyes, so we're not going to add another one on there. When you go over the roads, they seem okay. The bridges aren't falling down. You don't know that they're not being taken care of until 20 years later.
Till your car goes into the...
Right. So, and the voters in 2012 passed a half-cent sales tax to fund highways. That does not sunset for another 5 or 6 years, and so there's no urgency to pass a highway tax when you already have one that's not going away for 5 years. No one's going to go out on the limb, and polls have shown that the primary way that we fund highways, which was a gas tax, is an absolute non-starter. There's just no support for any kind of significant tax increase. So just everything put together, there's just no momentum. And the governor is not a huge highway guy. It has not been one of his priorities. And we've seen it when the governor is really behind something, it usually gets passed. If he's not, then there's probably going to be other things that happen.
Just the idea of applying a sales tax as opposed to the existing tax, or another sales tax anyway, to motor fuels, did that kill it? Even though it was going to be, submitted to a public vote.
Well, there was going to be the proposal was to have a wholesale tax, add the wholesale tax to motor fuels. I mean, I think it was just 3 letters, TAX, and that's all it took.
That did it. This past week had a big ceremony, or the administration had a long-awaited ceremony, much anticipated, in which the formerly dual holiday observed in observance of Dr. Martin Luther King and Robert E. Lee were divided at long last. The administration had really lobbied for this. Mr. Hutchinson had made it, in his words, a priority. Now it's done. Sarah?
Yeah, well, this bill to separate Martin Luther King and Robert E. Lee Day failed 2 years ago. This year, obviously, it passed. There's an educational component that's different this time. Part of it involves teaching kids about civil rights history and, Civil War era history. This was the bill that the governor got behind more than anything else this session, which I think was really interesting to many people. And we had, some Representative De La Rosa, some members of the legislature expressing real disappointment. But by and large, it seemed that there was much more consensus this time than last time. This makes now there's only 2 other states that have the same shared holiday left in the country. So Arkansas moved out of that 3-state category.
Mississippi and Alabama, I think, John, are the 2 that remain. The opposition was, it seemed to me, sterner in the House than in the Senate.
That's probably true, and that's where the House side is where it failed 2 years ago. This year, though, they went to a different committee. They went to the Education Committee, and they added the education component. And of course, we don't know how it would have done in state agencies this time. But the focus on education this time, and the involvement by the governor, the very heavy involvement by the governor. He recruited people to run the bill. He recruited people to support it, and he appeared personally in committee to testify for it. All of those things combined seem to give it much more momentum than it had 2 years ago.
He was not reluctant at all to talk about the impact this could have on the state's image, that it was a lingering problem.
He did mention the state's image, and whenever asked about economic impact, he would say, yes, I do believe that it would help the state's image and help attract businesses if we have a more welcoming image, an image of more unity and less division. But he would always also say that that's not the reason I'm doing this. He would always say the reason I'm doing this is because it's the right thing to do.
Well, there are potentially some other PR problems. We are about to resume executions, it would appear, in a big way. We have 8 scheduled over, 10 nights, I believe, which would be a modern record among all the states in terms of pace. And I talked to Mr. Hutchinson this past week about it, and he said, really there's nothing I can do except not set the dates, and plainly he's not going to do that, simply because of the way the appeals were exhausted. Steve?
Well, Arkansas hasn't executed anybody since 2005. They've been, for lack of a better word, they've been stacking up because of legal appeals and because it's very hard to get the drugs that we use in lethal injections, because the companies that make the drugs don't want them used in that way. And so we're finally apparently getting very close to that point. There is an appearance problem doing so many so quickly. The governor said that it's as difficult on the staff to space them out as it is to get them over with. But at this point, we're scheduled to do it. One of the drugs had expired. We've now got a new supply of it. Another of the drugs expires at the end of April. So maybe apparently we could get another supply, but it is running out of time. So we will, as it stands now, from April 17th, April 27th, we will execute 8 people who've been on death row for a long time.
Clemency hearing scheduled, I think, early next week. One, in fact, Friday morning, and I think some others, John, next week, would seem unlikely to change the probable outcome here.
It would be very surprising if the outcome were changed at this point. There have been so many hearings, so many appeals. They have to do this, but it would be very surprising if it changed where things are headed.
Well, there are some other potential PR problems involved, as even agencies of the state government and Mr. Hutchinson himself pointed out. They don't seem to be going anywhere in these closing days of the session, but that's the matter of what are the so-called bathroom bills, which Parks and Tourism, the State Chamber, some of the big corporate interests, on their own, have really adamantly opposed.
Well, there's one bill that's being heard in the Senate Judiciary Committee, and it's had one hearing. It kind of got pulled down for an amendment. It's supposed to run at some point, but the chairman, Senator Jeremy Hutchinson, the nephew of the governor, doesn't want it. It would make it to where you could sue a state agency, a government agency, including a school, if someone walked in on you while you were in the bathroom and it was felt that the government agency didn't do enough to prevent it, and you would consider yourself to be psychologically traumatized by that. It's the sponsor, Senator Linda Collins Smith from Pocahontas. She says it's just a basic privacy issue. We're just trying to protect people's right to go to the bathroom and not feel, violated. Senator Hutchinson says it's not necessary, and the government can't prevent this from happening. And the governor is adamantly opposed because he doesn't want Arkansas to become North Carolina, which has seen a tremendous amount of negative publicity because of their bill or their law.
By one account, John, I think it was almost $1 billion in potential lost revenue over, conventions, economic expansion, and the like.
Well, if you look at North Carolina, they lost sports tournaments. Big acts like Bruce Springsteen canceled concerts. So it's not hard to imagine that there would be a backlash against Arkansas. And also, state agencies say, why are you creating another reason for us to be sued?
And now, time for guns. Wow, what a week.
The governor signed into law a bill that has changed a lot from the way it started. This bill started as a bill that would require state colleges and universities to allow faculty and staff who have concealed carry permits to carry concealed handguns on campus. But in the Senate, it went through multiple changes, and the final version that the governor signed expands concealed carry rights. It allows a person who has a concealed carry permit to receive additional training and then get an enhanced permit. And the enhanced permit would allow the person to carry a concealed weapon not only on college campuses. It wouldn't have to be a faculty or staff member. It could be anybody who's old enough to get a permit, which is 21. They could carry not only on college campuses, but they could carry in
essentially everywhere.
Athletic events. They could go into airports. They could go into state offices. They could go into the Capitol, polling places, and after this passed, the talk about it having perhaps gone too far continued, and on Thursday, Senator Dismang, President Pro Tem of the Senate, Jonathan Dismang from Searcy, introduced he got a vote on the Senate floor on a bill that would exempt UAMS and the Arkansas State Hospital, which is connected to UAMS, from the bill, and it would from the new law, and it would exempt college sports events. And the bill passed out of the House, and then there was some drama. The NRA sent out a bulletin saying that this was
Senate. You mean passed out?
I passed Senate. I'm sorry. And the NRA sent out a bulletin saying that this is going to allow guns to this is going to ban guns on every campus throughout the University of Arkansas system. So so Senator Dismang then pulled the bill back into the Senate, and there was an amendment added to it that specifically spells out UAMS, and that passed again out of the Senate and now goes to the House.
Well, where's the NRA now?
They are against They are against Senator Dismang's bill, and they favor the law that was signed into law the way it is. But the governor is parted ways with the NRA. They weren't on board together with the final version of the law that he signed, but he is for Senator Dismang's bill. He has said that it is reasonable.
But to put it gently, I think it's fair to say, Steve, everyone, that Mr. Hutchinson's been uncomfortable with this matter since the start. Early on, he said, I don't see any. Why don't we just let colleges and universities, state-supported, handle their own affairs? Didn't work.
Well, the governor is very influential. What he wants it usually gets done. But the NRA is also very influential, and no incumbent Republican wants to have a less than an A grade from the NRA. And as we're talking about primaries a minute ago, each senator represents 86,000 Arkansans, and each representative represents 30,000. But in a primary race, there's only 10 to 14,000 voters in a Senate race, and only 3 to 6,000 in a House race. So a bad grade from the NRA can affect enough voters that it can affect your re-election chances.
And it's also worth noting that if the not alone, the NRA is among those organizations that are highly skilled in communicating with voters directly, either through social media, direct mail. They, no pun intended, they target their constituency very effectively. Something we all in common agreement.
But we all agree.
Yeah, all right. Well, here we'll close out with a little good news. On Friday morning, who would have thought that the state unemployment rate could tick down any lower? But in fact, it has by 1/10 of 1%, so it's now at 3.7. Obviously, this is good news for the, well, for everyone in the state, particularly those who now have work, but for the administration too. More jobs, more taxes paid. We'll continue to follow that. Steve, I'm sorry.
Well, we've been on a roll here a little bit. There's always a question of how the unemployment rate is figured. It's always it's always dropped you if you aren't looking for work, and a lot of people are not looking for work because they're discouraged. But I hate to rain on that parade. It's still, it's good news.
Yeah, in terms of how Washington measures this, often an increase in the unemployment rate is sometimes welcome because it's a signal that more people are they're re-entering the workforce or trying to, actively seeking work. We'll continue to follow. Thanks to everybody for coming in. As always, thanks to you for watching. See you next week.
Arkansas Week is made possible in part by the Arkansas Times, keeping you informed by covering people, events, and politics in Arkansas. By FM 89, KUAR in Little Rock, with in-depth news reporting, analysis, and discussion each weekday.